Electricast.
I just loved this movie as a kid. Absolutely loved it.
It's still kind of cheesy. You can't.
I know it's cheesy, but I did enjoy it. Well, I don't know.
Welcome to episode 210 of Film Generations, where two guys from the 20th century select a classic movie to show a panel of young film lovers and see if it still plays for today's generation. I'm Mark Netter. I'm a filmmaker and instructor at the Los Angeles Film School and co-founder and CEO of Electricast Media.
Hi, I'm David Tausik, and my team finally made the World Series after 15 years.
Hi, I'm Kylee, LaRue. I'm an aspiring film journalist, and as we speak, my team, the Dodgers, will hopefully be at the World Series.
Hi, I'm Guy. My team did not make it to the postseason, and I like movies.
And we have a very special guest panelist who is also currently our editor on Film Generations.
Hi, my name is Masha Yuzhakov. I'm a film student at Boston University and a cinematographer.
This episode, we travel through space and time to the 1968 science fiction classic that launched 4 sequels, a TV series, an animated series, a comic book series, and 2 theatrical reboots. It's Planet of the Apes, directed by Frank J. Schaffner with a screenplay by Michael Wilson and Twilight Zone creator Rod Serling, adapted from the novel by Pierre Boulle. A sensation when first released, Planet of the Apes tells the story of astronaut Taylor, played by Charlton Heston, who awakens from cryogenic sleep 2,000 years in the future just before his rocket ship crash lands on a seemingly barren planet. He and 2 other surviving crew members eventually find a band of wild humans, but are separated from each other when the humans are attacked by gorillas on horseback who chase, kill, and capture them like animals. Taylor finds himself prisoner in a world ruled by intelligent apes, desperately trying to make himself understood before being slaughtered or lobotomized, and is befriended by 2 progressive-minded ape scientists, Zira and Cornelius. But will this lowly human be able to break the rules of the rigid ape society and gain his inalienable rights, or even escape altogether? In the deservedly famous surprise ending, which I'm sure we'll be spoiling, Taylor learns that there's no real possibility of escape after all. Let's join our panel and find out if this first cinematic version of the Simian franchise is still top banana.
Well, I thought the movie is still relevant, even though it was a 1968 movie. And the social constructs that they show in the movie and portray in the movie are still applicable to our society today. That was the most interesting part. I was also very invested in the visual effects that were pretty bad, but considering that it was 1968, I'll give it credit.
Nice.
So that was my thing.
Very nice.
The first time I saw it, I was a lot younger. I was around I think 7 or 8 years old. And my dad wanted to show it to me because the place where they filmed it, that's where I would go growing up to go jump in the water. So when I started going there, he was like, "Oh, this big famous movie was made there." So I watched it and I didn't really get it because I just kind of wanted to look for where I would hang out with my friends in Malibu Creek State Park. I was like, whatever, monkeys, okay, whatever. I thought I got it. And then this time it was a whole new experience where I feel like I actually understood what was happening and wasn't just waiting for a playground I like to show up. So I really enjoyed it this time, and I actually understood what it was saying.
Guy, what about you?
I've seen parts of Planet of the Apes growing up as a kid, but never all the way together till about Rise of the Planet of the Apes reboot. But the crazy thing is that even though I haven't seen the Planet of the Apes all the way through, normal pop culture, you've experienced all of every scene of Planet of the Apes. It's everywhere. It's in The Simpsons. It's in Archer. It's in there's references for it everywhere.
Wow. David, you have a rather deep history with Planet of the Apes.
Well, so I was 9 when it came out, and right at that cusp of sort of getting more serious about movies. I mean, I liked movies before then. First movie I ever saw twice in its initial run in the theater. I'd never imagined I would do that. And I did the same thing the following year for 2001: A Space Odyssey, which even blew my mind more than this one. But yeah, I just loved this movie as a kid. Absolutely loved it.
So how convincing did you find the prosthetic ape hair and makeup, the masks, and do you think they still hold up, or what's your feeling about it?
So, today's CGI can make anything look like anything, make anything look real realistic. That being said, for that time, it was still I thought it was kind of cheesy, even even for that day. But like, how are you gonna make a person look like an ape? So I mean, you can forgive it, but it's still kind of cheesy.
How well do you think the performances come through with these heavy rubber masks that they're wearing?
That was my problem. I didn't have the problem with the hair. I thought that they were pretty well done considering it was 1968. But when they would talk and specifically kiss, that was my biggest issue for some reason because they had to open their mouths like this. So that was a little bit of an issue for me because it wasn't as convincing. And probably because we see so many movies with great actors in it now, I had a bit of an issue understanding what their emotional reaction was, but the voice actors were pretty good. So I still understood it. It was just I wish I could see their face as well. The facial expression specifically.
Kylie.
I mean, I honestly like I know it's cheesy, but I did enjoy it and I felt that everybody was so good and the voices definitely helped aid a lot. But just their eyes and their expression there and like when you see even apes now, like it's often like their eyes say things first and so do people. Like, if their eyebrows are raised or their eyes kinda linger and they look down, you can tell so much. So, of course, like, it's not the world's best makeup ever, but I still really enjoyed it, and I thought that I could definitely understand who the kind people were, even just based on the way their brows were already automatically furrowed. I felt that, like, yeah, I could definitely tell what they were thinking, what they were saying, who was good, who was bad, and I wish I could have seen the actors give a little bit more expression, but I think they did a great job for what they were given.
David, you were telling me earlier that the actors had to make very large expressions.
Yeah, they had these rubber prosthetics, and so to make the mouth even move, they would have to really exaggerate. And a lot of them are back there like hamming it up, acting as hard as they could so that some of it comes through. There's suspension of disbelief needed to think that these are actually gorillas and orangutans. I mean, they're not. So in 1968, my feeling anyway, was, oh, well, it's pretty good because, you know, you're used to seeing like bad monsters in rubber suits. And, this was better than that. This is like a kind of an achievement. So either you're going to say the whole time, okay, that's a guy in a costume, or you're going to get involved. But I'll also say that even in the new reboots, yes, I mean, the makeup and the CGI, it's better and it's more convincing. But to me, it's still the same problem. I don't fully believe it in the new ones either. Those aren't apes.
Mhm.
They're not apes. They're people running around with, some kind of motion capture thing. And you can see it. And they look like cartoons. They look animated more than they look like real three-dimensional, smelly, hairy apes. So
But
it's still a problem.
But the question is, does it take you out of the movie? Is the story good enough? Is the experience good enough that you stay in the movie? Or are there points
Yeah.
where you're just feeling like you're outside the movie, going like, ha ha
I, I,
ha?
I got taken out every time that like when they kissed, exactly like Masha said, there were no lip muscles.
I also thought that there was a little hierarchy in terms of how much effort was put into the masks, where some of the gorilla jailers always felt like a little less articulated, and so those took me a little bit
Mhm.
out of like, oh, that's just like a not that good actor doing this. But I mean, the actors who are playing the main apes are really established theater actors. Kim Stanley, who plays Zero, was Stella in Streetcar Named Desire on stage and on screen. Roddy McDowall, who plays Cornelius, has been in a million things going back to the John Ford classic, How Green Is My Valley, which beat Citizen Kane for Best Picture when he was a kid. And Dr. Zayas is played by Maurice Evans, who is not as famous today, but we saw him in Rosemary's Baby playing Rosemary's book reading older friend who tries to save her and is eliminated by the witches.
They're all good, but I felt like Kim Hunter's Zira expressed more. I don't know if maybe they worked harder on her makeup.
So, what about Heston's performance? Is he just a kind of standard hero? Is there something special that distinguishes Taylor? And why is this the guy that survives when the other two astronauts don't make it?
Well, I think it's because he's the one who, like, hated humanity the most, and this would be the lesson to him to be kind of like the Twilight Zone episode I watched with the guy with the library books, and he goes into a vault to read by himself. And I think it's the same message to Taylor here, is just, like, don't take people for granted, and you spent so much time alienating yourself, never needed anybody, and this is what happens now, you come back and you have nobody, and Now you wish to be alone, and now you have it.
Did anyone feel like Taylor was an asshole?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
What were his biggest asshole moves?
Anytime he referenced Nova, just really cringe. And you know, I'm not like super you know, I don't know, but it was just really hard to watch those interactions between Charles Neston and this girl who could not talk. You know,
Right.
it's just really
For our
like,
audience who hasn't seen the movie, Nova is one of the wild humans who can't speak, but she's also rather attractive. Looks like a model with teased out hair.
Yeah, especially when he goes on his philosophical conversation with himself because she cannot respond. And he says something along the lines of, "Oh, do you know how many women I had when I was back home?" And she was just there. I hated him in that moment. He was having a whole discussion with himself, putting himself so much higher than the poor girl that cannot comprehend the conversation. And then he's, "You know how many girls I had when I was home?" I'm like, well, I don't know, but I don't think it's relevant.
Also, when he's talking to the other astronaut, he's writing him about, oh, you just want a statue of yourself back home, but you're really in this shit now, you're stuck in a planet, and you're never going home, and I don't care because I hate people anyway. I mean, he's quite an asshole.
So mean. And like the way that he looked at Stewart, the female who was like asleep, even just the way at the very beginning when he looked at her, he was just like, can't wait to have you later. I was like, okay, like she didn't even get to talk. Like, can you give it a second? Like, I was like, oh, it just felt so like gross. And then he gets out and he's like, oh, the Eve died. She was a good specimen. And I'm like, he's just too much. Like, he was a lot. And he was very unlikable for like, I feel like the first 30 minutes, like hardcore, like didn't root for him until like I kind of felt bad that he was like alone.
But what's the
Was he the
reason for
one?
making him an asshole? Because they do it on purpose. They're not trying to create a lovable guy.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that it kind of sets him up for getting what he deserves?
I think it sets up humanity for getting what they deserve. I mean, in the end,
um,
so we'll get to this, but in the
Yeah.
end, I mean, I think Dr. Zaius was right. He's the villain in this movie, but he's right. Humans can't be tolerated.
Yeah.
Rough. So has this movie dated in any way outside of just the ape effects?
It's extremely relevant. The social commentary of the movie, I think, is still relevant.
wanting to control history and edit history and really slowly, like, not even really release facts. We're just gonna wipe this stuff out because we don't want this alternative history to come out.
They probably couldn't have been as hard hitting because of like the Hays Code and the standard for films of what they could attack, actually point out
The
and talk
Hays Code
about.
was already kind of in tatters by 1968, or was getting there. I mean, you have The Graduate came out that year. You had Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf like few years before. So, it may have been more about making it palatable for an audience that might not have been ready for more. I mean, it's interesting when we think about the films that are contemporary to this. A year later, in 1969, you get two movies that we've covered: Midnight Cowboy, which is the first one that we ever did on Film Generations, and The Wild Bunch, which opened this season, which is insanely violent. The first one has sexuality, has homosexuality. The Wild Bunch has just, brutal slow motion violence that was considered outrageous at the time. Probably doesn't disturb us now like it did back then. So, there were definitely changes happening in society, and they're definitely, this is around the time, this is just before Easy Rider gets released and really blows open the whole idea of what kind of movies young people want to watch as well. I'd love to hear more from the panelists to what you thought really hit hard as far as the satire or the message of the movie.
The movie's kind of was deep, but it also kind of had like this comedic effect because of its referenced in so many pieces of pop culture. Take your hands off me, you damn dirty ape. That's everywhere. You've heard that so many times. So when
Mhm.
Charleston Heston, it was kind of distracting because I was kind of like, waiting for that line the whole entire movie. And then then he sees the Statue of Liberty and then, oh, you maniacs. I mean, those were chuckles. And, I just couldn't really stop laughing. I was kind of laughing at him even before it.
So the movie's so famous
Mhm.
and has been, parodied so much or whatever that you can't really appreciate it for its own right, I guess.
But I think that speaks to the impact that it had on the people at that time, like it was like, because at first it was kind of regarded as a B movie, it wasn't really people didn't really take it serious, and then later on people started going like, whoa, wait a minute, this is kind of a big deal. I read Roger Ebert's review of this movie, and he gave it 3 out of 4 stars, which I thought was kind of pretty significant. And he said that he wasn't going to go see it because it was called Planet of the Apes. But then, he heard cab drivers and people talk about it. It's like, okay, let me go check out this movie, and then he liked it.
Yeah, it's a little like Jaws, where it's this genre movie. You can't take it seriously. It's apes, but then people were surprised by how strong it was.
Kind of what Quentin Tarantino's built his career on, is basically like turning B movie concepts into A-list movies.
Yeah.
And the line that's very funny refers back to an old Will Rogers line as, he said he never met an ape he didn't like. And so people in the theater knew that line and they would laugh. And, that kind of stuff was funny.
No, I liked the part at the beginning where it's like, they're like, oh, look, he's mimicking. And they're like, humans see humans do, or like.
No, I think they had fun with that. And I think it kind of lightens it up too. When you have so much tension going on, they can get away with it.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I thought was actually helped to set the reality of the movie early on was I think the crash landing sequence is fantastic. When they land on the planet. I mean, it was really well done. They're being flooded. You definitely feel like they're going to die there. I mean, it's really rough. And then they go on this, basically it turns into an adventure story for a little bit before you see the humans, where they're just trekking through like John Ford landscapes. It looks like might've been Monument Valley or somewhere.
No, it's Lake Powell.
It's Lake Powell. Is that where it is?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, if you got this experience watching it this time, my screen letterboxed because it's a real widescreen movie. I mean, this was shot for the widescreen. And when it came out, that was part of what made it so big and impressive. And I feel like that part of it, just watching these 3 men walking through the landscapes, was really incredibly well shot, was like gorgeous. And also, when I think back to when I saw it as a kid, it made me feel like these guys were screwed, like they're lost. It's desolate.
It's a lot of shoe leather, right? I mean, they're walking a long time and nothing's happened. But first of all, the music is incredible. I mean, that's a really, really forward score, right? You're noticing the music, and it's very modern, and it's very alien. There's a lot of 12-tone music like Bela Bartok and Stravinsky in there. A lot of weird instruments, and it's strong. I thought it was really effective, that opening.
I bought it all. I was on board. Dropping us into the ocean and everyone has to escape the sinking ship. It was really, really, really cool.
And that horror shot of the dead astronaut, the one that died in, the one that died in suspended animation. That's
okay.
Scared the hell out of me when I was 8 years old.
Me too.
Okay, well, okay. That's okay. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. They disregarded his death so quickly. They moved on. They were just, he died.
Well, they had to get out of the ship.
That
right?
was the moment.
Isn't that good?
I know they were putting the flag, the American flag, and they were talking about it. What happened? What do you think happened to the person? And one of the astronauts says, "Well, it's too late to talk about it now. Doesn't mean anything. We got to move on." I felt bad.
But they're also like 2,000 years in the future, and nobody they know is still alive back on Earth, and they are really lost in space, as far as they know.
I think that was the biggest moment for me, when they were putting the flag, the smallest flag that you can see, that you can find, just in hope that someone maybe one day will find the remains of them, because they're not even sure if they're going to be alive in a second. And then they go through this path. However, the most interesting part for me was the power switch as soon as they see the population, because a minute ago they weren't sure if they're going to survive. Now I put it down in my notes. They said, "This is the best they've got around here. It's 6 months. In 6 months, we'll be running this planet."
Oh, it's such a good line.
I did not like them in that moment.
Yeah.
Because for
Mhm.
me, it was so much tragedy that already happened to them. They're never going to see anyone that they know or have known in their entire life. They're on the unknown planet. They have 3 days worth of supplies, and they're walking around battling the planet just to see some sort of life on on this planet. We didn't know that it was Earth at that point, but they see a plant, and I feel so excited for them.
Yeah, it's funny. You're really talking about that moment, they're colonists. They're thinking like
Mhm.
conquerors coming to America and taking it over from the Native Americans, when the boats first landed.
That's what I mean about Dr. Zayas being right about humans. You just, on the one hand, they're treating them abominably, but then if they don't, what's going to happen?
Mm.
The humans are going to try to take over.
But
They're
are
going
they
to create another world war.
Yeah.
are humans worse than apes? Like, I mean, in this movie, the apes also have this very rigid society, and they're not accepting the humanity of the humans. But are the apes just as bad, or do you actually feel that they're maybe better than us?
I think the only thing that may make them better is that they have the knowledge of what we did. That's the only leg up they have. Otherwise, we're exactly the same. They just know that these empires can fall and these species can be eradicated if they don't play their cards
I
right.
think Zaius knows. I don't know if
So,
anyone else really knows. Maybe a couple of the other
yeah.
elders, but Zaius is kind of on top of that whole thing.
Mhm. I think he's like trying to protect the apes from doing the same mistakes.
How'd you guys feel about the moment where the gorillas show up and start attacking the humans?
I remember the first time I saw an ape on horseback charging at, a human. That was a really striking image. I mean, we've seen it since then. It's a good image.
And how about the way they do the reveal where it's a high angle shot and he's riding on horseback with Nova? You kind of think Adam and Eve, maybe they're going to start this new world. And the camera slowly tracks left, and you first see the torch, and you're not quite sure what it is. And then cuts to him, and it cuts back,
Mhm.
and you see the parts of the crown sticking up in frame.
It's just a beautifully directed, beautifully put together final sequence. It's like it's done in just a few shots and everything's revealed in just the right order I think the maximum impact.
It was done great. I totally agree with David on that one. But if it was just them walking on the beach, I would be so
Right, heading
disappointed.
off in the sunset. They're gonna have a
Yeah,
baby.
Yeah, that's
Open ending. What do
so
they have ahead of
cliche.
them? We don't know yet, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, but
Yes, a happy open ending. That I don't like those.
I agree. I think that, especially sci-fi movies around that time, kind of tried to teach you a lesson about something. I think this was like racism, nuclear war, conservation, maybe.
yeah.
It was like, oh, this is where humanity is messed up, and this is the lesson that you need to learn from it.
I think
Makes sense.
I think the power of the ending is that it makes you go back in your head through the rest of the movie for a moment, right back to the kind of the beginning, and go like, it makes everything look like in a different light. It's a little bit like the twist in Fight Club. We'll be right back.
Yep.
Kylie, were you able to find out anything about the making of the movie?
Yes, there is actually so much. I'm surprised there hasn't already been a movie about the making of the movie. So I'll definitely boil it down, but there's so much online. So Rod Serling wrote the original first draft of the script. He tried to sell it with a production company, but it didn't really go anywhere. It just lay dormant for a few months. And then eventually, Arthur P. Jacobs, who did lead it to what we know it is today, got a hold of the script and still allowed Serling to be a part of it, and he gave it to MGM, Paramount, 20th Century, United Artists, Warner Brothers, and everyone was like talking apes. No, bye. And it was so hard to get people attached to the film, but because of people like Richard Zanuck, who blew up to fame in the production world with 20th Century Fox, he so believed in it, Rod Serling kept on it. They decided to do like a little mini film. Rod Serling wrote a 9-page script to have the actors kind of do like a mock scene that got condensed version up to the film. And they filmed it and they're like, look, this is really good. And then Richard Zanuck was able to help 20th Century Fox to convince them to do the film. And because of that little 9-page scene they did, they eventually sold it. Roger Serling has a quote saying that, like, this is serious satire. When people see monkeys in ties and suits, they want to laugh, but this is serious. And we had to convince people that this is a serious version of that. But to the making of it was filmed from May 21st, 1967, and it wrapped August 10th of the same year. The early scenes we see like Grand Canyon, Colorado River, and then Arizona and Utah all over. And then the cool part is, like, what I love so much is that the Ape Village was in Malibu Creek State Park, but also for the Statue of Liberty parts, the close up of the crown, but also the torch was paper mâché that they kind of used just as a crane to shoot down to kind of show that illusion, like hierarchy of scale. And then the way they did the last scene where you could see the entire Statue of Liberty and everybody, they actually just put a matte painting in the shot over the cliffs. And then just a fun little last tidbit for that part is that the cliffs they were walking by, you couldn't get there by foot. So the horses, the actors, the crew, everybody had to get helicoptered all the way
Wow.
down because they wanted that shot
Wow.
and they wanted that location, but there was absolutely no way to get down there. I think is just a testament to like the movie magic of that time and how much they could really do back then.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Guy, tell us a little bit about the reception of the film and maybe how it's changed over the
Right.
years.
So the budget for this movie was 5.8 million, and at the time it grossed all time for Planet of the Apes was 32 million. It was the number 8 movie in the year it came out. Number 7 was Rosemary's Baby.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy how like all these movies are like really kind of like closely. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is the second movie from the last reboot, was the number 8 movie of the year.
So, David, what about the director, Frank J. Schaffner?
You know, he's an excellent director who isn't much discussed in film classes, but he deserves to be. He was born in Tokyo. He grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and he was in law school at Columbia University when World War II broke out, and he was drawn into the U.S. Navy. I saw some action in Europe and North Africa, and then he joined a World Peace Organization before ending up as an assistant director on The March of Time, which is the long-running weekly newsreel that was parodied in Citizen Kane as Time on the March. And then he was promoted to an executive job at CBS. He was covering sports, beauty pageants, public service programming. And in 1950, he started directing live TV plays as that became a thing. And he won 3 Emmys, one for 12 Angry Men, which he made 2 years before the Sidney Lumet film version. So he made the first version of 12 Angry Men. He won 2 DGA awards for outstanding directing. The first was for a Playhouse 90 production. The second was for a special that made him kind of famous. It was a tour of the White House with Jacqueline Kennedy in 1962,
Wow.
the year before John Kennedy was assassinated. And he was a genteel, easy-mannered, apparently charming guy. I'm told by a Santa Monica neighbor of his that I know that during the shooting of the White House tour, the Secret Service approached him and had to say, please don't address the First Lady as sweetie. So he was scolded. He started directing features for Columbia Pictures and getting good reviews, but no hits. But then his 5th film was Planet of the Apes, which was huge. And then he kept rolling with 3 more epic films. He did Patton with George C. Scott from a screenplay by a young Francis Ford Coppola. I did Nicholas and Alexandra. He did Papillon, which is a great film with Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen. He won the Best Director Oscar for Patton. This is 71, so he beat out Arthur Hiller, Federico Fellini, Ken Russell, and Robert Altman to win that Best Director Oscar. He also directed The Boys from Brazil, which had a stellar cast. And the great William Goldman likened his talents to those of David Lean and Richard Attenborough as someone who really could handle epics. But his career fizzled out in the 80s. The hits stopped coming. He served for a few years as president of the Directors Guild, and he died of lung cancer, having been a lifelong smoker at the age of 69.
Not a bad run, though. All right. I think it's time for us, finally, to give our recommendations and reviews. 4 stars is a movie that's not only great, it's an A plus. It's one that you would put on your top, let's say, 50 movies of all time list. A 3.5-star movie, no slouch. That's an incredible, excellent movie. 3 stars. A really interesting movie that maybe has some imperfections, but thank God it's there. 2.5 stars is a B plus. 2 stars is a B minus. It's either a good B movie, if you like the genre, you'll like it, or a bad B movie. If you like the genre, you might be disappointed. And we won't talk about the ones that are less than that.
I would recommend this movie to anyone. First of all, every film student or someone who likes movies, I think this is a seminal one you have to watch. It's just like one of those required viewings. But I think also anyone who likes special effects or who likes makeup, I think this is one where like it was very ahead of its time at the time and it laid the groundwork for everything that you see. But also it can give you ideas that you can innovate, you can change the game, and there are so many ways to still be creative. And I think that's just something that I like to take away from this movie. But my rating, I think I'm just going to give it a 3 stars.
A minus for you.
I think it's a great movie. I think the ending itself is a 3.5, but I think the whole movie itself for me just kind of sits at a 3.
Guy, your turn.
Every movie that gets finished deserves eyeballs, whether it's good or bad. That's my opinion, and hopefully I'll make a movie and people will put their eyeballs on it. That being said, this movie echoed throughout our society. You know what I'm saying? It's everywhere. It's staggering. Yeah, it's a madhouse. You know what I'm saying? It's like so many quotes, so many references to this movie. How much it touched me personally, not that much, but it's phenomenal. It's my second favorite Charleston Heston sci-fi movie.
What's the first?
Soylent Green, of course. It's badass. So I give it 3.5. You know, it stands the test of time. There it is. I said it.
Nice. Our special guest panelist, Masha. Tell us, who would you recommend this movie to, if anybody, and how many stars would you give it?
I think anyone who's into filmmaking, I agree with Kylee. That's a must-watch kind of movie. Also, anyone who is into sci-fi, because I think it's a historical reflection of how it's developed as a genre. As for my rating, personally, I think I will give it an A minus, 3 stars.
Guy, keeping track, getting ready to give us the average after we're all finished.
Yep.
David, you and me, coming from the 20th century.
Right. So, there's personal stuff, right? So first of all, I mean, I loved the movie as a kid, but I'm not going to rate it based on that because I just think it's time to put it in the context of today. So as something that affected me as a kid, it was very meaningful, but it should be by all rights a 2.5-star movie because it's just a genre movie. It's about talking apes. I mean, right. But it rises above for sure. By the way, on Blu-ray, on streaming too, it looks really good. So I'll say that I was more impressed by Charlton Heston's performance than I ever would have imagined I'd be. I always thought of him as kind of a cornball actor a bit. I never thought of him as a serious actor the way you think of somebody, Laurence Olivier or Edward Norton or anyone who can, But I was really impressed by his performance. I think if you watch this performance, I mean, if it's a madhouse, it's a madhouse, or get your filthy paws off me. If those are classic lines, it's because of the way he sells them. And he sells them big time. He's running around barefoot. I don't know how the hell he does. I think they did have some kind of plastic barefoot prosthetic for his feet. Otherwise, he probably would have cut his feet to ribbons. He's just running around, fighting with everybody. It's an insanely physical performance that's really impressive to me. So I think that's something about the movie I hadn't noticed. And then the music really, really impressed me. I mean, I could sit down and just listen to the score of this movie, just sitting on my couch and listening to it. I mean, the music's so good. It's a good looking movie. The production design, it has a little bit of that Star Trek paper mache look, but on the other hand, it also has a really great 60s, like there aren't any, like Antonio Gaudi, there aren't any right angles kind of thing. The sets are actually beautiful. There's so much going on. So I'm caught between 3 and 3.5, and I've talked myself into 3.5 now. That's what I've done, despite the fact it has flaws, no question about it. But it has a lot of great things going for it. So 3.5.
I just recommend this to anybody who wants a really good sci-fi story. I think what's successful about this movie is that it works on a number of different levels. It's a hard sci-fi film, and I think it also works as an adventure story. I think those moments are really great. And I feel like it's a journey. You really feel like you go a long way with this character. Your mind keeps opening up to possibilities. And, and I think Masha is 100% correct. If you don't have this ending, this movie is not memorable like it is now. But it's not just like, oh, that was a good ending. It's like that ending makes everything work. It makes you feel like we had a full, well-rounded story. To me, this is all what makes it a 3.5-star movie. It's almost a 4-star movie to me. I mean, it really has meant a lot to me over time. But, when I put it up against like 2001: A Space Odyssey, maybe it's not quite at that level. But for me, it's easily an A-list movie and a 3.5-star for me. Guy, do you have our average?
Our average is 3 1/3 stars. So we're going to go ahead and round it up.
I think that rounds up to 3.5.
3.5.
Planet of the Apes is available to stream with a subscription to Hulu or IndiePix and available for rent on Apple, YouTube, and Fandango, among other places. Speaking of YouTube, you can find Film Generations there with clips and stills and on audio wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like our show, please tell your friends. Please rate and review the show so others can find us as well. Film Generations is an Electrocast production. I'd like to thank our panelists, Kylee, LaRue, Guy Lewis, and special guest Masha Yuzhakova, and our co-host and producer, David Tausik. Our executive producers are myself, Mark Netter, and my partner at Electrocast, Peter Rafelson. For our next episode, we come back to Earth, specifically to Italy in 1960, as we follow a tabloid journalist for 1 week on his ephemeral search for love and happiness in the never more glamorous city of Rome. It's Marcello Mastroianni and Anita Ekberg, starring in Federico Fellini's satiric comedy drama La Dolce Vita, aka The Sweet Life. Will our young lovers be seduced by Fellini's bittersweet widescreen vision, or simply bid it arrivederci? Find out only here on Film Generations.
Electrocast.